Hi, and thanks for joining us here at Inspire Online. Today I'm joined by Rachel Carter, who's been responsible for the Spirit of the Mayflower Language of Sculpture project here for Inspire. Hi, Rachel, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. Can you tell us a bit about what the project is?
Yes. So for the last few years, I've been researching my family history, and I was finding they were living in areas that are called the Pilgrim Roots area today. So that's areas of North Nottinghamshire and Lincolnshire. And I started getting quite excited about looking at how they moved and travelled and trying to trace my ancestors. And this started working into some amazing different projects, and Inspire asked if I could work a new project with the Mayflower as the sort of carrying story, whether I could create a project that could travel to different parts of the community, into schools, and to create an exhibition that could tour the libraries.
That's it, and there's a number of aspects to the project. Macrame being the sort of core of it. Can you tell us the significance of macrame?
It was clear from the very beginning of my project that I wanted to include hand weaving of some type. And what I was looking for was to create surface texture within my projects. And my ancestors worked the loom, and a lot of the pilgrims that left the Midlands, they would have been very familiar with loom working, as a lot of them worked in the textile industry when they fled the Midlands and went off to Holland. But loom weaving produces a very fine cloth, and I knew that I wanted to create something a little bit more tactile. So macrame is the perfect craft where you can scale up the cords. You can work very fine or you can work with really thick cords. And the range of knots makes it more accessible for the community to have a go. But for me as an artist, it gives me this huge toolkit of knots that could create different patterns and surface textures. So macrame was the perfect craft to carry this project.
Through the different workshops that you ran, you introduced the craft of macrame to a lot of different groups. Can you tell us a bit about who you got involved in the project?
Yeah, so the idea came to create a family tree using the macrame technique. So when I knew that I was working with the Scrooby Knitting Group and a group of children from Redlands Primary, the children were responsible for making the bark and the texture of the trunk and branches of the tree. And for that, we used the square knot technique and the half square knot technique. And that creates these beautiful twisted pieces and flat weaves that have got a lot of texture. And the children really took to that very well and really enjoyed making loads and loads of these. And then for the Scrooby Knitting Group, I introduced a little bit more of a complicated knot, which was the double half hitch. And we used those to create the leaves of the tree. So every Thursday, I'd go up to Scrooby and we'd sit with the knitting group and we'd be creating lots and lots of these leaves to add to the family tree.
Now, for obviously the young people, and I'm sure some of the group of the scuba group, this was probably the first time that they'd had a go at this as a craft. What sort of feedback were you getting after the sessions?
So with the children in particular, a lot of them had not encountered macrame before. And when I told them that it was 11,000 years old, there was a lot of look of disbelief on the face of the children. But equally so with the Scrooby Knitting Group, because they're a group that are regularly doing crafts. A lot of them were familiar with macrame. Some of them may not have had a go, but they also was quite surprised to hear how old the techniques are. A lot of them had encountered it in the 70s, as a lot of people had when the macrame fever took hold. So it was quite a different reaction from both groups.
You mentioned the macrame tree that you produced as part of this project. What was the significance with the tree?
So when people are creating, or I suppose when people are delving into their family history, a lot of times we present it in the tree shape. So we create our family tree and we think of ourselves as the new leaves and our ancestors as the strong roots and our foundations. So it's a great universal symbol to represent the growth of the family, or looking back through the family to see where we've come from, where are our roots. And this using the tree in macrame form was a great way to engage the young children, but also to engage some of the adults. And it was with the adult group that whilst we were knitting and weaving away, that we had a lot of conversations about our ancestors, and they started to share with us lots of fascinating stories about what some of their ancestors had done.
Yeah, you talk, the trees in that representation of family history and the roots. You were collecting the sort of some of those family history stories, weren't they? Were donated and people shared those stories. Can you share a couple with us that were really had some resonance to you?
Whilst we were all busy making the macrame leaves, I shared with the group some of my own family history stories and some of the interesting things that I'd found. And we also talked about some of the ladies that travelled on the Mayflower 400 years ago, that was from some of the villages. And then these stories started to be teased out from the participants. And there was one that really stood out to me. She said, well, I don't think my ancestors done anything of significance. But then when she started to share the story, it was a lady that lived on a tiny island off the coast of Scotland who brought up, I think it was 8 children. They all grew into adulthood, and a lot of the girls, she taught them all needlecraft. And the image that she brought in the following week showed them in these immaculate outfits that the girls had hand stitched themselves. And I thought, well, that is an achievement for somebody at that period of time, to have all of those children grow into adulthood, but then for them to leave home with great trade behind them. I thought that is an achievement, and one that we should share. That the family history stories, they don't have to be a great inventor or have created this item. It can just be about celebrating the role that they've had in the family and the roots of that family. So it was great to be able to share some of these stories in the exhibition.
Rachel, the exhibition's live now and people can access that, can't they, virtually? We'll have all the links above. But there is a new part to this, a macrame hanging piece. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Of course. So when I was working with the children and with the adults up in Scrooby, I was sharing lots of images on social media. A lot of people sent the same question: how can we have a go? How can we try this? So I've designed a new piece, a macrame art piece that can be hung in the home, and it features the leaf pattern that we used using the double half hitch, and it also features the square knot as well. I've combined those 2 elements together in a new art piece that you can create and hang in your home.
That sounds excellent, and definitely the instructions are all the short videos to follow, so there's no excuse to not get involved. So hopefully people will get involved. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us, Rachel, and if anybody's interested in looking at the exhibition, as I say, follow the links above.